Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, July 1st. It's still an unsettled weather pattern over the northeast U.S. and mid-Atlantic region as an upper level low meanders around the area. It will finally slide to the south and east out of the picture by the upcoming weekend. But before we get there, we have another shot at showers and thunderstorms today into tonight. Looks like tomorrow will be a rain-free day in the mid-Atlantic region, and then Friday turns quite hot. Temperatures are liable to climb well up into the 90s in the D.C. metro region, maybe the lower 90s in Philadelphia, near 90 degrees in New York City. But then looks like a backdoor cool front will actually slide from the northeast to the southwest across much of the mid-Atlantic region by Friday night into early Saturday, probably paving the way for a decent weekend. Maybe quite warm, especially south of the Mason-Dixon line, but not excessively hot by any means. And generally a rain-free weekend coming up, it looks like, for the Mid-Atlantic region. Well, let's take a look at the latest radar. And again, we have kind of a spinning of some radar echoes here this morning associated with that upper level low that has been kind of plaguing the northeast U.S. over the last couple of days. After a few hours of daytime heating in the morning and midday hours, the atmosphere has become unstable with the cool air in the upper part of the atmosphere and the very warm conditions down in the lower levels, and that will happen again today. Not much in the way of rainfall over the next few hours, but again, once that atmosphere destabilizes, we'll have some increasing coverage of showers and thunderstorms through the midday and into the afternoon and all the way into the evening hours. And any storm that forms in the mid-Atlantic region can produce some heavy rainfall, an outside chance at some small hail because the freezing level is quite a bit lower than normal given that upper level feature out there. Meanwhile, out in the western U.S., we talked about this yesterday, still some very cold air for this time of the year, even a little bit of snow in the highest elevations of the Intermountain West, and that clash between that cold air mass out over the western two-thirds of the nation and warmer air to the east is leading to quite a bit of rainfall right across the heartland going into the Tennessee Valley this morning, and that has really been a wet pattern out in that part of the country for the last few days. It looks like it continues for another day or two, and again in the northeast, an upper level low continues to meander over the area. Well, let's take a close look at the operational run of the GFS from 6Z last night. We're going to look at the 500 millibar height anomalies, then the temperature anomalies at 850 millibars, and then we'll look at the surface maps. Again, two big features. Upper level low sitting over New England, creating some unstable conditions, additional showers and thunderstorms. We've had some decent rainfall all the way from Maine down into the at least the northern half of the Mid-Atlantic. Even the D.C. area experienced some isolated strong thunderstorm activity early last night, and some rainfall this morning, early this morning, over the Delmarva Peninsula. This sits and spins for another 24 hours or so, and then we'll see in a moment here it tends to slide to the south and east. Meanwhile, kind of a strong upper level feature associated with that chilly air mass out in the Intermountain West and all the way into the southwestern part of Canada. So let's move forward here. Again, have to deal with this upper level low over the northeast for another 24 hours or so. Then it tends to slide to the south and east by the time we get into Friday morning. This is the day where temperatures could jump quite a bit. Places like D.C., maybe low to mid 90s Friday afternoon for highs, and into the 90s perhaps in Philly on Friday, and at least 90 degrees in New York City. But then we have a decent chance that a backdoor cool front kind of slides from the northeast to the southwest by the time we get into Saturday morning. Looks like there'll be enough of a push for a little bit less in the way of heat, probably upper 80s in D.C. on Saturday as compared to the low to mid 90s on Friday, probably in the mid to upper 80s in Philadelphia and New York City for July 4th, which is Saturday. And notice out here in the middle part of the country a big ridge developing certainly leading to a hot weather pattern out across the heartland this week and going into the early part of next week. Let's keep moving forward here. Notice still into the latter part of the week, and we kind of have northwest flow aloft in the northeastern part of the nation. And again, it looks like that will help to prevent any kind of a heat wave this weekend. Turn out to be quite warm with, again, highs way up in the 80s in much of the I-95 corridor region, but I do not expect any kind of excessive heat wave for the July 4th weekend. Meanwhile, down across the southeastern U.S., another upper level low that has been in an area that has experienced some cooler than normal conditions over the last several weeks, and that will continue with a lot of cloud cover in that part of the nation, certainly by the latter part of the week and going into the early part of next week. And here we are now by Monday, still an upper level feature sitting over the deep south, northwest flow aloft over New England, and quite a hot weather pattern setting up for the middle part of the nation. Well, let's now take a look at 850 millibar temperature anomalies. Speaking of temperatures, and here we start off the day on Wednesday with cooler than normal conditions in the northeast, at least in the mid and upper layers of the atmosphere. That's all associated with that upper level low sitting and spinning over New England, and with cool air aloft. Anytime you get sunshine this time of the year, it warms up quickly in the lower part of the atmosphere. So lower levels are warm, upper levels are cool. That creates instability, overturning in the atmosphere, and that leads to an increase in coverage and intensity of shower and thunderstorm activity for the midday and afternoon hours into the evening, all the way from D.C. north and east across Philadelphia, New York City, and all the way into New England. Meanwhile, here's that colder than normal air mass out in the west, and already some warmer than normal conditions building in the center part of the nation. And let's see what happens here. Again, Thursday looks like a relatively rain-free day. Probably very few clouds in the mid-Atlantic region, and hence temperatures will climb a little bit more than today, touching the 90-degree mark in some spots like in D.C., for example, and then we'll climb into Friday. And Friday itself, the holiday, July 3rd, looks very warm in the mid-Atlantic region, likely in the 90s in D.C. and perhaps in Philly as well, and at least touching 90 degrees in New York City on Friday. As we end the work week, of course, that will be celebrating the Independence Day holiday. On Friday itself, it looks like what happens is you can kind of see it here starting to take shape back to normal here by the time we get to Saturday morning. There's a little bit of a backdoor cool front pushes from the northeast to the southwest, and then slightly cooler ocean air will drop temperatures a bit between Friday afternoon and Saturday afternoon in places like D.C. and certainly in Philadelphia and New York City. Not a bad weekend at all shaping up in that part of the nation. Here we are even into late Saturday starting to show some below normal conditions in the 850 millibar level here, and that should last right through the upcoming weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, pretty decent weather conditions for the mid-Atlantic region. Then we'll start to see this heat wave start to build out across the northern plains here, associated with that developing high pressure ridging aloft. And again, very warm, above normal conditions setting up for at least the northern plains and going into the southeastern part of Canada. After a decent weekend, we'll start to even warm up to above normal conditions in the mid-Atlantic region the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame of next week. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from the operational GFS at 6Z. Again, upper level low spinning over the northeast creates instability in the atmosphere with cooler than normal air aloft and warm air in the lower levels of the atmosphere. And we'll see some showers and thunderstorms expanding in coverage right here as we go through the midday and afternoon hours. And again, any thunderstorm that forms can produce some heavy rainfall for a short period of time, an outside chance even for some small hail, given the lower levels of the freezing point aloft with this upper level feature sitting over New England. And then we go into Thursday itself, looks probably rain free in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, throughout the Mid-Atlantic region and Northeast U.S. At this time, that upper level feature is starting to make a move finally to the south and east, out open the open waters of the Western Atlantic. Then we get into the day on Friday. Looks like we're setting up here for a hot day on Friday in the 90s for the most part across the I-95 corridor region. But notice there's a little low pressure system showing up on the GFS, and that's kind of the first signs of a backdoor cool front that will slide again from the northeast over the ocean to the southwest, and it should make it all the way into the DC metro region by the time we get into Saturday. Could be some showers and thunderstorms later Friday into Friday night associated with that cooler air push coming from the ocean to the southwest. Again, a backdoor cool front here late Friday into Friday night, and then by the time we get into the weekend, weak high pressure, but nonetheless high pressure, tends to take over in the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast U.S. Not as hot on Saturday as it will be on Friday. Pretty decent weather setting up, it looks like, for Saturday and Sunday. Cannot rule out an isolated shower or thunderstorm, but for the most part, the upcoming weekend looks generally rain-free, isolated shower, thunderstorm, and generally moderate to maybe warm conditions. No excessive heat expected on Saturday and Sunday. It does turn warmer again early next week. Notice here, by Sunday afternoon, kind of a stubborn low pressure area both at the surface and the upper part of the atmosphere over the deep south. That'll tend to keep a lot of cloud cover there, keep that part of the nation a little bit cooler than normal, and certainly wetter than normal. So again, another day of instability in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. with an upper level low meandering over the area. Showers and thunderstorms will increase in intensity by the midday and continue. That threat will continue this afternoon into the evening. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, my meteorologist, Paul Dorian.